Why, why would a modern, industrial powerhouse like Germany, divided or not, still be using World War II-era tanks well into the 1970s and even the 1980s? Why, during the height of the Cold War, when NATO and the Warsaw Pact pointed thousands of nuclear weapons at each other, were German soldiers still climbing into machines that first rolled out during Hitler's campaigns in the early 1940s? This is not a myth. This is not a mistranslation. This actually happened. And the real explanation is deeper, stranger, and far more revealing than most people realize. Tonight, we're going to uncover how Germany, one of the world's most technologically ambitious nations, found itself training, patrolling, and preparing for war using tanks designed 4 decades earlier. We will explore the political desperation after 1945, the hidden tank shortages of the Cold War, the surprising usefulness of World War II armor, and the technology gap that forced both East and West Germany to keep their grandfathers' machines running long after they should have been museum pieces. This is why Germany was still using World War II tanks in the 1980s. 155 to 520. Origins. Germany's military collapse. Narrator. To understand how post-war Germany ended up relying on World War II tanks, we need to go back to May 1945, the moment Germany surrendered. The Wehrmacht didn't simply lose the war, it completely ceased to exist. Its factories were bombed into ruins. Its officers were imprisoned. Its equipment was confiscated, melted, studied, or destroyed. And its tank industry, once the pride of the Nazi war machine, vanished overnight. Germany didn't have a reduced army. Germany had no army at all. So naturally, Germany also had no tanks. When the Cold War began, this became a massive problem. The Soviet Union was building a sphere of influence in the East, armed with tens of thousands of T-34s, T-54s, and later T-62s. Meanwhile, the Western allies were scrambling to build NATO. But there was one obvious missing piece. The geographic center of the Cold War was Germany, yet Germany possessed 0 armored vehicles. This created one of the biggest strategic contradictions in early Cold War history. 520 to 945 divided Germany, East versus West. West Germany's problem, rebuilding from nothing. Narrator. In 1955, West Germany was finally allowed to create a new army, the Bundeswehr, but they needed tanks immediately. There was just one small issue. The Bundeswehr had no modern tanks, no production lines, and no engineers with recent experience. The Allies were hesitant to give West Germany sophisticated equipment too quickly. Memories of the war were fresh. So in the mid-1950s, West Germany was forced to improvise. They imported whatever they could. American M47 Pattons, some leftover Sherman variants, old training vehicles from Allied stockpiles. But the surprising detail is this. For early training and logistics, World War II German tanks were quietly used because they were familiar, available, and cheap to refurbish. Yes, the same Panthers and Panzer IVs that once fought in Normandy were pulled out of scrapyards, re-engineered, or borrowed from nations that still use them, like Spain, Czechoslovakia, and France. Across the Iron Curtain, East Germany, the GDR, had different issues. The Soviets didn't trust them. So instead of giving them new T-54s immediately, they relied heavily on T-34-85s, a tank designed in 1943. East German border troops patrolled with World War II tanks well into the 1960s and early 1970s. And in several reserve units, the T-34 lasted until the early 1980s as emergency mobilization equipment. For both German states, the message was clear. World War II tanks remained necessary because neither side could afford to replace them fast enough. But the story doesn't end there, because in West Germany, things got even stranger. 945 to 1330. Why World War II tanks remained in service. Number 1. Training vehicles. Reliability over firepower. Narrator. One of the biggest reasons Germany kept World War II tanks running was surprisingly practical. They were excellent training vehicles. Panzer IVs and re-engineered Panzer IIIs were used as driver training tanks, recovery vehicle trainers, engineering test beds, mobility and terrain testing platforms. They burned less fuel, were easy to maintain, and helped thousands of new German soldiers learn basic armored doctrine. Number 2, engineering and weapons testing. Post-war German engineers needed a platform to test new optics, new stabilization systems, new armor welds, new turret mechanics, without risking expensive brand new prototypes. World War II tank hulls became convenient, cheap test platforms. Number 3, border patrol and internal security. West German border police units used refurbished World War II armor, mostly turretless vehicles, for riot control, transport, and rural patrol in a country still rebuilding. They weren't used as frontline weapons, but as utility vehicles in a country still rebuilding. Number 4, military museums and training vessels that never retired. West Germany kept many World War II tanks officially in museum storage, but in practice, they were reactivated for training films, Cold War education, mock enemy vehicles, terrain testing. Some of these stayed in operational condition until the mid-1980s. Number 5, the Leopard 1 and Leopard 2 arrived late. Perhaps the biggest reason, Germany's new modern tanks took a long time to develop. The Leopard 1, late 1960s. The Leopard 2, late 1970s into the 1980s. So everything before them was a patchwork of foreign imports and World War II leftovers. World War II tanks weren't Germany's first choice. They were simply what Germany had when the world couldn't wait. 1330 to 1730. Case studies. Real World War II tanks active during the 1980s. Case 1. Panzer IVs in Syria, 1970s, 1980s. Narrator. The largest group of World War II German tanks still in active service during the 1980s wasn't in Germany at all. It was in Syria. In the 1950s, Syria purchased dozens of refurbished Panzer IVs from Spain, Czechoslovakia, and France. They were used in the 1967 Six-Day War, the 1973 Yom Kippur War, training roles well into the 1980s. German engineers quietly inspected and photographed these tanks for research throughout the Cold War. Number 2, French Panther tanks. Even France, bizarrely enough, kept Panther tanks running until 1949-1950 and used remaining hulls for gunnery testing, experimental projects, and reserve training vehicles into the mid-1950s. Germany studied these post-war French Panthers extensively when designing the Leopard 1. Number 3, Bundeswehr Panther and Panzer IV test platforms in the 1980s. West German workshops kept several World War II tanks operational as test platforms. Mobility tests for new engines, suspension experiments, armor fatigue testing, filming instructional material for West German troops. These tanks were not frontline units, but they were fully functional machines maintained by Bundeswehr engineering units as late as 1982-1983. This is the part of the story rarely talked about. They weren't used as weapons. They were used as tools. Tools for training the army of the future. 1730 to 2010. The impact on technology and strategy. Narrator. Germany's reliance on World War II tanks shaped the Cold War battlefield in surprising ways. Number 1. The Leopard 1 philosophy. Because German engineers spent years studying Panthers, Panzer IVs, and even Tiger components, they rediscovered old truths. Mobility greater than armor. Optics greater than raw firepower. Cruise survivability is central. Simplified mechanics increase reliability. These lessons influenced the Leopard 1, one of the fastest and most mobile tanks of its era. Number 2, the Leopard 2, a return to the Tiger philosophy. Ironically, later German design returned to something similar to the Tiger's doctrine: superior firepower, advanced optics, and shock effect. Without years of using World War II tanks as test platforms, this technological evolution would have looked completely different. Number 3, training generation.